there," she said, with an unconvinced glance at the surrounding thickets. "Sure, I'll give a trawl through the island, ma'am," volunteered Slipper, with unexpected gallantry. "And if it's the devil himself in it, I'll rattle him into the lake." He went swaggering on his search, shouting "Hi, cock!" and whacking the rhododendrons with his stick, and after an interval returned and assured us that the island was uninhabited. Being provided with refreshments, he again withdrew, and Philippa and Maria and I fed variously and at great length, and washed the plates with water from the holy well. I was smoking a cigarette when we heard Slipper addressing the solitudes at the farther end of the island, and ending with one of his whisky-throated crows of laughter. He presently came lurching towards us through the bushes, and a glance sufficed to show even Philippa, who was as incompetent a judge of such matters of many of her sex, that he was undeniably screwed. "Major Yates," he began, "and Mrs. Major Yates, with respects to you, I'm beastly drunk. My head is light since the fluenzy, and the doctor told me I should carry a little bottle in of spirits." "Look here," I said to Philippa, "I'll take him across and bring the boat back for you." "Sinclair," responded my wife, with concentrated emotion, "I would rather die than stay on this island alone." Slipper was getting drunker every moment, but I managed to stow him on his back in the bows of the punt, in which position he at once began to uplift husky and wandering strains of melody. To this accompaniment we, as Tennyson says, moved from the brink like some full-breasted swan, that, fluting a wild carol ere her death, ruffles her pure cold plume and takes the flood with swarthy web. Slipper would certainly have been none the worse for taking the flood, and as the burden of Flanagan's ball strengthened and spread along the tranquil lake, and the duck once more fled in justifiable consternation, I felt much inclined to make him do so. We made for the end of the lake that was nearest Trelane, and as we rounded the point of the island, another boat presented itself to our view. It contained my late entertainer, Mrs. Canty, seated bulkily in the stern, while a small boy bowed himself between the two heavy oars. "It's a lovely evening, Major Yates," she called out. "I'm just going to the island to get some water from the holy well, for me daughter that has an impression on her chest. Indeed, I thought 'twas yourself was singing a song for Mrs. Yates when I heard you coming. But sure Slipper is a great warrant himself for singing." "May the devil crack two legs under ye!" bawled Slipper in acknowledgment of the compliment. Mrs. Canty laughed genially, and her boat lumbered away. I shoved Slipper ashore at the nearest point. Philippa and I paddled to the end of the lake, and, abandoning the duck as a bad business, walked home. A few days afterwards it happened that it was incumbent upon me to attend the funeral of the Roman Catholic bishop of the diocese. It was what is called in France un bel enterrement, with inky flocks of tall hatted priests and countless yards of white scarves, and a repast of monumental solidity at the bishop's residence. The actual interment was to take place in Cork, and we moved in long and imposing procession to the railway station, where a special train awaited the cortège. My friend Mr. James Canty was among the mourners, an important and active personage, exchanging condolence with the priests, giving directions to porters, and blowing his nose with a trumpeting mournfulness that penetrated all the other noises of the platform. He was condescending enough to notice my presence, and found time to tell me that he had given Mr. Murray a sure word with regard to some of "the wreckage." This with deep significance, and a wink of an inflamed and tearful eye. I saw him depart in a first-class carriage, and the odour of sanctity, seeing that he was accompanied by 7 priests, and that both windows were shut, the latter must have been considerable. Afterwards in the town I met Murray, looking more pleased with himself than I had seen him since he took up the unprofitable task of smuggler hunting. "Come along and have some lunch," he said. "I've got a real good thing on this time. That chap Canty came to me late last night, and told me that he knew for a fact that the island on Corran Lake was just stiff with barrels of bacon and rum, and that I had better send every man I could spare to day to get them into the town. I sent the men out at 8 o'clock this morning. I think I've gone one better than Bosengate this time." I began to realise that Philippa was going to score heavily on the subject of the fairies that she had heard snoring on the island, and I imparted to Murray the leading features of our picnic there. "Oh, Slipper's been up to his chin in that run from the first," said Murray. "I'd like to know who his sleeping partner was." It was beginning to get dark before the loaded carts of the salvage party came lumbering past Murray's window and into the yard of the police barrack. We followed them, and in so doing picked up Flurry Knox, who was sauntering in the same direction. It was a good haul: 5 big casks of rum and at least a dozen smaller barrels of bacon and butter; and Murray and his chief constable smiled seraphically on one another as the spoil was unloaded and stowed in a shed. "Wouldn't it be as well to see how the butter is keeping?" remarked Flurry, who had been looking on silently with, as I had noticed, a still and amused eye. "The rim of that small keg there looks as if it had been shifted lately." The sergeant looked hard at Flurry. He knew as well as most people that a hint from Mr. Knox was usually worth taking. He turned to Murray. "Will I open it, sir?" "Oh, open it if Mr. Knox wishes," said Murray, who was not famous for appreciating other people's suggestions. The keg was opened. "Funny butter," said Flurry. The sergeant said nothing. The keg was full of black bog mould. Another was opened, and another, all with the same result. "Damnation!" said Murray, suddenly losing his temper. "What's the use of going on with those? Try one of the rum casks." A few moments passed in total silence, while a tap and a spigot were sent for and applied to the barrel. The sergeant drew off a mugful and put his nose to it with the deliberation of a connoisseur. "Water, sir," he pronounced. "Dirty water, with a small indication of spirits." A junior constable tittered explosively, met the light blue glare of Murray's eye, and withered away. "Perhaps it's holy water," said I, with a wavering voice. Murray's glance pinned me like an assegai, and I also faded into the background. "Well," said Flurry in dulcet tones, "if you want to know where the stuff is that was in those barrels, I can tell you, for I was told it myself half an hour ago. It's gone to Cork with the bishop by special train." Mr. Canty was undoubtedly a man of resource. Mrs. Canty had mistakenly credited me with an intelligence equal to her own, and on receiving from Slipper a highly coloured account of how audibly Mr. Canty had slept off his potations, had regarded the secret of Holy Island as having been given away. That night and the 2 succeeding ones were spent in the transfer of the rum to bottles, and the bottles and the butter to fish boxes. These were, by means of a slight lubrication of the railway underlings, loaded into a truck as fresh fish, urgent, and attached to the bishop's funeral train, while the police, decoyed far from the scene of the action, were breaking their backs over barrels of bog water. "I suppose," continued Flurry pleasantly, "you don't know the pub that Canty's brother has in Cork? Well, I do. I'm going to buy some rum there next week, cheap." "I shall proceed against Canty," said Murray, with fateful calm. "You won't proceed far," said Flurry. "You'll not get as much evidence out of the whole country as 'ud hang a cat." "Who was your informant?" demanded Murray. Flurry laughed. "Well, by the time the train was in Cork, yourself and the Major were the only 2 men in the town who weren't talking about it." Chapter 8.